Stoicism's emphasis on detachment and emotional suppression are a rejection of life's dynamic challenges. Life is chaotic. It's filled with deceit, battle, and the inevitability of Ragnarok. To thrive, one must actively engage with the forces of chaos. You have to use cunning, strength, and adaptability. Why should we suppress our storm within when it drives us to greatness? Maybe you could relate. Maybe you are a fellow berserker. I was born this way. I was born with rage. I can't just intellectually suppress it, become a wise stoic man sitting on a mountaintop, letting this rage wash away. I have to integrate it into my life, like a berserker, and use it instead of being used by it. And that's my contention with Stoicism, is that running away from your emotions, running away from your passions, trying to be some sort of Jedi is not going to work for Hyperboreans. We have powerful drives within us. We are governed by unseen forces. And to try and rationalize everything and become some sterile, lifeless, accepting stoic is not the path forward for people like us. Maybe your bio-spiritual essence is more stoic, then good for you. But for me, it's not. And probably for you, it's not as well. Passion fuels action, creativity, and the pursuit of greatness. Stoicism calls to tame these passions and remain indifferent. It's like an abandonment of your own inner fire. It needs to be wielded like a blade. Okay, you need to use your passion and direct it where you want it to be, not be swept away and do things that you're going to regret, but reel it in and focus it. Odin had a passion for knowledge. He didn't have a passion for giving up on his quests and retiring and accepting his fate. He knows he's going to die in Ragnarok, but he does everything he can to try and change the outcome, even though he knows the outcome's inevitable. He wants to do whatever he can to tilt the scales into his favor, his side's favor. So when that day comes, the forces of the Aesir will be victorious over the forces of Loki. Fate is a struggle, and you can either fight it, being aware that you are fated in a certain direction, and yet still struggling against it. Or you can be stoic, and you can have that amor fati. Fate binds all, yet striving against it is what defines us Hyperboreans, the reaching for the ever infinite. You can't just accept. You have to seek out to carve your mark. Always be defiant, even in the face of your own destiny. Okay? And that sometimes means using deception. This rigid concept of virtue, that you always have to tell the truth. There are many times in the Norse tales where people don't tell the truth in order to gain the upper hand. Okay? Use morality for your own in-group, not for the giants and the Ettins and the goblins. Okay? You're not going to get anywhere telling a goblin the truth. There's no virtue in that. You have to be pragmatic. You have to be flexible. This universal moral law, again, that Stoicism falls under this umbrella as well, where you have to cultivate these quote-unquote virtues And one of these virtues is truth. Okay, so then we get back to whose truth are we talking about? Because people will swear by their own holy books that their truth is their truth. Okay, the truth of the Torah, the truth of the Quran, the truth of the Bible, the truth of the Havamal. These are all very different truths. And people die for these truths. So what are you telling me is the truth? Is it the Stoic truth of rationalism and renunciation? This dismissal of external things like achievement and recognition, it's antithetical to the Havamal's notion of kinsmen die, but the name of a famous man lives on. You want to build up that prestige. Okay? The prestige goes up higher and your vril goes up higher. And you store that vril in your biospiritual essence. And you take that with you into wherever you may go on your next journey. A life without glory is a life wasted. Okay? Find where you find glory. And don't let anyone else tell you where you find glory. Let that be something you decide. It couldn't be something that is unorthodox. It could be something that is conventional. But you have to figure out that for yourself. Wisdom is not gained through contemplation of the Stoic literature. Wisdom is gained through sacrifice, hardship, and first-hand experience. Reason and reflection have their place, but this is overemphasized in the Stoics. Okay, plucking out your own eye and throwing it into a mystical well. That's how you get knowledge. Not through studying what Seneca wrote 2,000 years ago. Okay, so there might be some interesting stuff in there, but I have to say, guys, I did some research for this, and Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is probably one of the most boring books I have ever read, and I don't recommend it for anybody. Marcus Aurelius is one of the most overrated emperors of all time, and if you want to find a cool emperor, look up Titus, Flavian, the Arch of Titus, and get into why he has his own arch, because that guy is awesome. Marcus Aurelius was a cuck, and nobody really needs to know anything else more about him. He basically just invented Roman Buddhism as a way to cope, okay? And there's actually lots of people out there who agree with me. Rationalist, almost secular type of worldview. Men are just men, we're all the same, we're universal. I'm a mystic. I like the world of myth and mystery and spiritual forces. I think that's a powerful part of human consciousness that you can't really deny. Even if you are atheist, you have to accept the fact that these powers come into play within the grand chessboard of humanity. Reason alone cannot grasp the depths of the cosmos. To live fully, you're going to have to honor the mysteries in some form. I found that through the Norse way. It's been a very long time now. I've been doing this, that path. It doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon. It's been well over 15 years now. And I've seen it become popular in the last 5 years, which is cool. But, now everyone is an expert. And there's still so much I don't understand either. So yeah, death is a certainty. But it's not a reason to withdraw. It's actually a reason to act, to fight, and to live. To die standing and not sitting. The Einherjar. Warriors chosen for Valhalla. Those are people who lived life with intensity, okay? This makes me want to be more intense because I've realized, okay, I need to be more intense because maybe I'm not intense enough to be einherdig. So it drives you to want more, to that frenzy, to the mead, to the drink, to the fight. These things are part of us and we can't just escape it. Again, we have to embrace it. I embrace the chaos of this world. It's wild, it's unpredictable. There is order and there is chaos. There is both. You can't just say everything is order. You can't say everything is chaos. There's both. It's an interplay. And you have to use that interplay as a source of creativity. But the Stoic drive to equanimity in order to impose some sort of mental order on yourself, it's not for me. It's probably not for you. And you shouldn't feel guilty for having these forces within you. Okay, life isn't just a sea that's calm all the time. Storms bubble up. You got to learn how to ride the waves of storm, not just try to constantly calm it. Okay, and the Stoics have arranged the passions under 4 headings: distress, fear, lust, and delight. These are the passions that need to be avoided. So, first off, distress and fear, these are very natural feelings that happen to human beings. And in fact, I think fear is good. If you have fear, if you have some sort of aversion to something, if you expect danger, you should act on that instinct. You should listen to that, especially if it's coming from your gut, especially if it's coming from within. There's been lots of times in my life where I've had inexplicable feelings of distress and fear, and I dipped out of that situation, only later to learn that something awful was just around the corner, and I was lucky enough to avoid it. Now, sometimes I don't listen to my instincts, and I try to override them using my intellect, and that never goes well. Okay, we have another one, lust. Okay, lust here is said to be an irrational desire. Okay, lust is good. Lust is what perpetuates humanity. Lust is the main driving force for a lot of action in life. Obviously, you need to control lust and not let it control you. But to renounce these passions is absolutely counterproductive. And maybe you just don't have a strong of a drive as I do, as strong of a passionate drive as me. So it might be easy for you just to turn these things off and meditate. But for me, it's not. It's not easy. And I'm not some sort of like hedonist either. I'm an anti-porn guy. I'm an anti-succubus guy. But to pretend like lust isn't always there, it's a foolish notion. The problem is when you become overridden by this desire and it starts to control you in a negative way, that's when it's bad. But if you know how to control it and to cultivate this feeling, this passion, and to pursuing things that you desire, then I think it's actually the ultimate fuel in life. It's one of the ultimate fuels. Again, rage and wrath and wrath, hatred. There are things and honestly people in this world that I hate. That aversion towards them makes me not want to be near them. I don't have to deal with their just absolute satanic rapture because I hate them. So my hate also leads to aversion, also leads to me not dealing with them, which actually benefits me in the long run. It benefits my life. Okay? There's nothing wrong with hatred. There's nothing wrong with rage. There's nothing wrong with anger. You should see me building furniture from IKEA. Their anger and their rage and the passion makes me build it faster. Sure, there's some road bumps in that process, but without the rage and the anger, I wouldn't have the stubbornness to want to complete the task. Because some of these IKEA furniture manuals are just written so absolutely terribly that I don't know how you can not get angry trying to make some of these desks and chairs and dressers and whatnot. A wise person, a sophos, somebody who is free from the passions, apatheia, right? Being apathetic. Now they say, well, we don't have apathy, we have eupathia. We are clear-headed. We're not experiencing the bad emotions, we're only experiencing the good emotions. What a sterile, bland way of looking at life, okay? You have to have all the colors. You have to have rage. You have to have the sadness and the grief. You have to have the elation and the joy and the cheerfulness and the good spiritedness and the fellowship. It's a whole array of vast emotions, like a color wheel, that if you're just, just diluting yourself to these little tiny inklings of feeling subvariants of these emotions, just a very gray, bland way of living life. For me, anyway. I wouldn't want to live that way. I want to feel rage every once in a while. I think it's good. And you have to channel in a good way, okay? Like bashing something in like a sport, where you're not just like freaking out at, child or something absolutely ridiculous. But like, there's ways that we have figured out how to channel these emotions. There's nothing wrong with shame. Shame is good. People should be ashamed of themselves sometimes. People without shame, those are the worst people ever. You can tell when somebody doesn't have shame. They can be, put on blast in front of the entire internet for to see them something completely degenerate, and they don't care. They have no shame. And then everybody around them has to feel shame for them, especially those close to them, their loved ones. That's what happens. When you don't feel these emotions, you make everybody else around you feel them instead. Okay, so without shame, what are you? You're just shoveling that shame on everybody else. I like emotions, okay? I don't want to be ruled by them, but I don't want to pretend like they are not going to ever be a part of my life. That's a ridiculous notion. With these types of right-hand paths, like Buddhism and Stoicism and certain aspects of Christianity and certain aspects of, a lot of these conventional right-hand path types of pathways, is that, for me anyway, it's like you have to be in this constant battle with your true self. Like you have to deny a certain aspect of you that was created for a certain reason. But I find with my Hyperborean path, instead of denying the things that make us Hyperborean human Hyperboreus, Homo Hyperboreus, you instead learn to channel those emotions, those passions, those wants, those needs, that fire, the sun wheel within, ever turning, ever churning. You just keep fueling the sun wheel until you ascend into Avrilia. So here we have a quote from Marcus Aurelius' Meditations. Constantly regard the universe as one being, having one substance and one soul, and observe how all things have reference to one perception. the perception of this one living being, and how all things act with one movement, and how all things are the cooperating causes of all things that exist. Observe too the continuous spinning of the thread and the structures of the web. We are not all one. We are not all one living soul. Each soul has a face. Some souls don't have faces. Some souls aren't actual souls. Some people just don't have them. But this concept of monism, that we're all one, I mean, here we go again. We see a pattern here. And I reject this notion. I believe that certain souls have a face. What that means is that they are an individual. The soul has an ego. It continues on through time as a separate being. I am not you. You are not me. You don't want to be me. I probably don't want to be you either. Okay, that's just weird. Let's not be one. Let's just agree to not be one. Let's be separate. You can be your Vrilya in your own way, and I will send my own Vrilya, and we can fly around in our Vrilya separately. But I don't want to fly around in your Vrilya with you. Nothing personal. I like having my own space. I like having my own soul. I like having my own path and my own destiny. I don't want to be Marcus Aurelius. I really don't. Or Nero. Or any of these weird Roman emperors. Caligula. That's not me. The actions of Caligula are not mine to take on for myself. I don't have to face that Orlog. He has to face it, not me. That's what I mean. And the ultimate end, individual souls are perishable and can be transmuted and diffused, being received into the seminal reason of the universe. Okay, so you're just going to become a logos spermaticos, which means you are now just reason. You are just the essence of reason. That is your ascension. Instead of ascending to having your own Vrilya chakra spaceship you can fly around the multiverse with, you're just going to be reason. That sounds awful to me. That sounds like hell. That's like the end of The Believer. That's what that sounds like to me. If you've never seen The Believer, that's what the end of The Believer is like. Okay, just a constant rhetorical hell. I mean, to some of these people, maybe having some sort of intellectual argument for all eternity is their heaven. Some sort of rhetorical gaze into the cosmos. But that's not for me. I want Valhalla.